Okay, let's go ahead and get started. Desiree, is the recording on?
Yes, it is.
Thank you. I would like to now call to order the meeting of the Municipal Audit Committee. It is Thursday, January 6, 2021, and we are noticed from 1 to 2 p.m. Ms. Camacho, would you go ahead and begin by calling the roll, please?
Sure thing. And I just want to point out it's January 7th, Thursday, January 7th.
Oh, thank you. January 7th, 2021. I was looking at the old agenda.
Okay, so Ms. LaFrance.
Here.
Ms. Allard.
Here.
Mr. Rivera. Mr. Rivera. I see he's trying to unmute himself, but we'll pop back to him. Ms. Henderson.
Present.
Mr. Slivka.
Present.
And Ms. Morrison.
Present.
And we'll try Mr. Rivera one more time. He might be having issues, but you have a quorum.
Thank you, Ms. Camacho. It looks like Mr. Rivera is restarting his computer. Okay, we'll go ahead and get started, and hopefully he'll be able to join us in a couple minutes. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for being here. I want to note that the documents, including the agenda, are posted online for any members of the public or any members of the committee who don't have those in front of them. If you go to muni.org, click on Assembly on the left are the links, and click on the committee's link, scroll down to the Municipal Audit Committee and click on the web page, and you can access those documents. So we have 3 items today under new business: BDO update, the 2021 audit plan and internal audit, and then AIM 186-2020 internal audit report 2020-11 Mountain View Community Center Parks and Recreation Department. We don't have anything listed under old business, and I expect we should have plenty of time for audience participation as well. Does anyone have anything they want to add to the agenda? Okay, we will go ahead and get started with the first item then, the BDO update. Who will be walking us through this one?
We have Sam Thompson as a guest, and he is part of the audit team for BDO, and he is going to make the presentation.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Slivka. Thank you, Mr. Thompson.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the Municipal Audit Committee, members of the Municipality of Anchorage. Thank you for the opportunity to be here today and to go over our presentation for our audit planning document for the audit for fiscal year 2020. Also on the call today from BDO is Joy Mariner. She's the Anchorage BDO Office Managing Partner, also the partner in charge of the Municipality of Anchorage Audit. And Jin Yang Chi, she's a manager with BDO responsible for the audit as well. Joy, do you have anything you'd like to add?
No, just hello, everyone. Sam is going to just give you an overview of the audit process and the plan for this year, but I'm glad to be working with all of you again this year. So go ahead, Sam.
Thank you, Joy. Desiree, is it all right if I share my screen so I can bring up the PDF to go through?
Yes, of course.
All right, give me 1 second.
See the little box with the arrow pointing into it is the share.
All right, can everyone see that?
Yes.
All right, perfect. All right, so here we have today is just our required document to the those charged with governance, which would be the audit committee. A good portion of this document is what we refer to as boilerplate language, just required disclosures under professional auditing standards. We'll go through those briefly, go over our plan for the audit in terms of timing, expected completion dates, and then be open to answer any questions anyone on the committee may have. So just to start with, professional standards do require that we communicate certain matters related to the financial statement audit to those charged with governance. So the scope of our audit includes the audit of the municipality of Anchorage as a whole. So that includes both the CAFR financial statements as well as standalone financial statements for the Anchorage Water Utility, Anchorage Wastewater Utility, Port of Alaska, and Civic Ventures. We also do a small agreed upon procedures engagement related to Anchorage Solid Waste Services. Responsibilities. So as your auditor, we are responsible for forming and expressing an opinion on whether the financial statements, as well as the schedule of expenditures of federal awards and the schedule of state financial assistance, which are all prepared by management with oversight of the audit committee and the assembly as a whole, are prepared in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. In addition to the audit we do over the financial statements, we also do audits in accordance with government auditing standards, where we look at certain laws, regulations, grant agreements, and compliance aspects that the municipalities are required to be in compliance with, as well as conduct a standalone federal single audit in accordance with the U.S. Code of Federal Regulations, Part 200, as well as an audit in accordance with the State of Alaska Audit Guide and Compliance Supplement for state single audits. So the audit of these financial statements and single audits do not relieve management or those charged with governments of their responsibility in terms of governance of the organization producing these documents. More details along these lines were included in our engagement letter, which was sent over to Ms. Camacho yesterday to be signed by the Municipal Audit Committee Chair. Once we have this engagement letter back signed, we therefore can formally start our audit for fiscal year 2020.
Let me just quickly note for the record that Christopher Constant is in the meeting.
Thank you. So in terms of audit strategy, I'm not going to go through all the bullet points here. Our audit strategy is similar to what it's been in prior years. However, we always change parts of it to become more effective and more efficient and to adapt for changes in auditing standards as well as changes in generally accepted accounting principles, and also to adapt for the circumstances in which we are in this year. So as everyone's well aware, we're still dealing in a remote environment where we're planning to do the majority, if not all, of the audit remote, not on site as we've done in prior years. Last year when we completed the 2019 audit, the majority of that was done remote as well. So I'd like to say we have good practice working remote. It's been going on 10 months now for us as a firm doing so. And that's what we're planning to do now. So we've been in communication with the parties that need to be aware of our plans and have started planning for such a remote audit. Also, is given the balances, transactions for the year, significant unusual transactions such as the sale of municipal light and power and also the receipt of coronavirus relief funds. Those will all play a role in determining what our audit strategy will be for this year.
Let me also just quickly note for the record that we have been rejoined by Mr. Rivera.
Thank you. So the planned scope of our audit, here's just a brief initial assessment. Obviously, this isn't the entire scope of our audit, just some areas where we've identified certain significant risks at the forefront of our audit and other areas that will directly impact the planning phase and the scope of our audit. So the first off is we always address the risk of fraud, management override of controls. We perform certain substantive procedures related to manual journal entries prepared by management, as well as the use of accounting estimates and significant unusual transactions, as these are items that tend to have a higher risk profile than others. Also, we have noted significant risk regarding revenue recognition. So in response to that risk, we have planned to perform certain substantive procedures to gain assurance over the existence of revenue recognized in the fiscal year. These procedures also include transactional level tests, but also we do certain data analytic driven type tests. We perform these over various revenue cycles and also individual transactions which themselves have a higher risk profile. So in addition to these two significant risks, our planned scope of the audit also includes procedures specifically designed to address both the COVID-19 pandemic and the CARES Act. In regard to the COVID-19 pandemic, we will assess the various business risks presented by COVID-19 and evaluate the related processes, policies, and internal controls in place to address each risk, as well as assess the financial statement impact of COVID-19 in terms of unexpected, unbudgeted costs and the impact on the municipality's ability to continue operating as a going concern. In regards to the CARES Act, we will evaluate the accounting and financial reporting treatment for the federal funding awarded to the municipality and whether those funds were expended for certain allowable activities and all eligibility requirements were met in order to recognize revenue. Finally, at the bottom of this page, this is what we can consider a group audit, and that BDO audits the vast majority of the financial statements, but there is a certain portion of the audit related to the Anchorage Police and Fire Retirement System, which is audited by another firm. We intend to make reference to this other firm's report over the Anchorage Police and Fire Retirement System in our report, and we have already started the process of communicating with this other firm to inform them of our decision to do so. As I mentioned earlier, we're conducting our audit in accordance with government auditing standards. So this requires that we perform certain procedures to gain assurance that the municipality is in compliance with certain provisions of laws, regulations, contracts, and grant agreements, non-compliance of which could have a direct and material effect on the financial statements. We do not, however, evaluate internal controls for the purpose of providing an opinion. However, if we are made aware of certain deficiencies in internal controls, we will bring those to the attention of this group, the audit committee, as well as management. Also mentioned earlier, we will perform an audit over the municipality's schedule of expenditures of federal awards in accordance with both government auditing standards and the uniform guidance, as well as the municipality's schedule of state financial assistance in accordance with government auditing standards and the state audit guide. So here we come to our timeline. Today is January 7th. We intend to spend a portion of January as well as February completing the planning stages of our audit and also conducting certain procedures related to interim field work. The bulk of our audit field work, though, kicks off the first week of March. And when we start in March, we plan to work continuously up until the release of the reports on the financial statements. So we anticipate, if everything goes well, obviously, that we will have our audit completed and be able to issue our opinions over the various financial statements by approximately June 30th. As, of course, things change over time, and as we become aware of any changes to the schedule, after discussion with management, we will make it known to the audit committee through our weekly status update emails. And if another audit committee meeting needs to be held for further communications regarding the status of the audit, we will do so at that time as well.
And Mr. Thompson, if I may pause you, Mr. Rivera has a question for you on this last slide.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Fantastic. Restarting solves 80% of computer problems. Okay, so on this specific slide, wanted to see if BDO has any known issues that may come up. For example, will COVID-19 be an unknown that extends the timeline for the audit completion? Or like normal, are there any state issues that you're aware of that may extend the timeline of the audit completion?
That's a great question. I'll start with COVID-19. Obviously, we're planning to do our audit for the most part remote this year, as we did last year. I thought it worked out very well last year. We were able to get the information that we needed in a timely manner. If that's the same case this year, I don't foresee that being an issue. However, if COVID is to flare back up and individuals both on the BDO side as well as on the municipal side are unable to work, or there's certain work stoppages or individuals unable to complete their normally assigned duties, then of course that could lead to delays in receiving the information that we need to complete our audit. If that were to occur, we will inform this group as soon as possible and come up with an alternative timeline in which we plan to then complete the audit. In regards to receiving information from third parties, most notably the state of Alaska and the information needed regarding PERS, that has been an issue in prior years. To my knowledge, that will not be an issue this year. I understand the auditors and as well of the PERS plan as well as PERS itself. Everything's going smoothly there, and they should have the reports issued and finalized that are necessary for the municipality to get the information they need to complete the municipality's financial statements in a timely manner. But should something change there, again, we'll let management as well as this group know as soon as possible.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Hey,
Thank you,
Felix,
Mr.
this is Alex. I'm sorry I can't raise my hand because I'm driving, but I would make mention of the one note, obviously, that we had a very significant transaction in October where the sale of ML&P was concluded. There's still a lot of ongoing work there, and it's quite possible that getting that finalized could possibly delay the ultimate issuance of our audited financials.
Thank you, Mr. Slivka, and thank you, Mr. Thompson.
Thank you. So we have a few more slides to go through real quick. So again, we are required to maintain independence as independent auditors. The additional language regarding our independence is included in the engagement letter. Here again is our client service team. It's the same, for the most part, the same team as last year. The three main individuals responsible, Joy, myself, and Jen are back. And this is, for each of us, has been numerous years we've worked on the audit. That's the majority of the presentation. I do have some additional slides just related to changes in GASB standards, but these are rather technical and complex. I'm not sure if anyone cares to go over those at this point in time. If not, I'm happy to answer any questions anyone may have.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson. Do members have any questions? And if the chat isn't working, you are welcome to text me at 907-351-7199 as well. Looks like we don't have anyone in the queue right now. So thank you, Mr. Thompson, for your time and for providing this overview.
Well, thank you. And again, we're very excited to work again with everyone at the municipality and look forward to another successful audit.
Thank you, us as well. Okay, we'll go ahead then to the next item on the agenda, item B, 2021 Audit Plan, Internal Audit. And will, Mr. Chadwick, will you be presenting on that?
Yes, I will.
Okay, thank you. It's all yours.
Thank you, Chair. You have in front of you the 2021 audit plan, proposed audit plan that was provided earlier. We present it to you because in code, it states that the committee will review and endorse Internal's annual audit plan, and then we'll submit that plan to the Assembly and Mayor for approval. So in front of you is the draft plan. This plan is based upon the feedback that we received when we requested audits for 2021. We do have some audits from prior years that are carried forward. We're currently working on an audit of the Community Right to Know program, transfer of responsibility agreements, and overtime. This is, you'll note that this on the next page for sunset audits, we have quite a number of sunset audits. That's by code. So we have, I think it was about 10. It fluctuates from year to year based upon the 3-year cycle for each one of those. So we prefer that these were more staggered, but that's just the way the cycle works. So we'll be doing 10 sunset audits this year. A couple of routine audits, such as the P-card program and purchase orders under $5,000. And then we have one special study so far on the audit plan. I'm open to any questions that you may have regarding the plan or any comments. Ms. LaFrance, I think you're on mute.
Thank you, Mr. Chadwick. I was. Kind of a rookie mistake this far along into the telemeeting game. Do members have any questions or comments for Mr. Chadwick?
This is Alex Slivka. I don't have a comment other than to say that I endorse the plan as proposed, and since I may be losing coverage, I would, if it's appropriate, to make a motion to endorse the plan as drafted.
Thank you, Mr. Slivka.
I will go ahead and second that motion, Madam Chair. And I just do have one question for Mr. Chadwick.
Okay, go ahead, Mr. Rivera.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So, Mr. Chadwick, do you suspect that you will have the staffing capability to complete all of the proposed audits in the 2021 plan?
Mr. Rivera, through the chair, I don't think we will have the resources to complete all these audits. This year, one of my staff was assigned to assist the Emergency Operations Center. And not only he was over there, but I had another staff person over there, and I was over there too for about 3 months. So for all of last year, or 2020, our office provided nearly 2,012 hours of staff support to the Emergency Operations Center. Please keep in mind that a full-time person or a full-time equivalent is 2,080 hours. So we provided to the Emergency Operations Center essentially 1 FTE for 2020. For 2021, the Emergency Operations Center has asked that one of my staff persons remain at the EOC on a part-time basis. So he will be over there, and that's the current arrangement. He spends 50% of his time over there and 50% of his time with internal audit. So given what we have on the audit plan, it's a very aggressive plan, but given our limited resources, I don't think we'll be able to get to all these. Now, having said that, some of these may fall out of the plan. For example, pool cash controls. Well, the pools really haven't been open because of COVID-19. There's some pools that are open on a limited basis, but until they open on a more sustained basis, we probably wouldn't be doing that audit. So some of these may drop out for a variety of reasons. Those that are required by code, though, that we will certainly need to do, such as the Police and Fire Retiree Medical Trust 3-year review, that's by code, and we have to do that. Also, the sunset audits are by code, so we have to do those. Did that answer your question, Mr. Rivera?
That does, and if I may, Madam Chair, just have one quick statement.
Of course.
Thank you. So of the audits on the 2021 plan, I guess from my perspective, if I were to give you policy guidance on which ones that we should definitely do this year, I would ensure that we prioritize the 2021 special study, the only one on that list. I think that's of particular interest for many Assembly members. And then also the levy upon connection assessment. I think that's of interest to many Assembly members. But otherwise, I will leave it up to the discretion of your expertise on which ones to take out if you need to.
Thank you, Mr. Rivera. I've made a note of that.
Thank you, Mr. Rivera. And before we proceed to a vote, I do have a question for you, Mr. Chadwick, and actually two, and one was partially answered. My first question was, could you give a quick recap on the status of any open 2020 audits? And then the second question was if you had perceived any downside to keeping this ambitious plan. I think what Mr. Rivera has suggested in terms of prioritization makes sense. And as you noted, there may be some that drop off the list. But if you could give just a quick recap of the status of 2020, and then any comments on having such an ambitious plan. Thanks.
Thank you. Through the chair, the 2020 audits that we have that are continuing to this year, we have the community right to know, and we are just now wrapping up field work and will probably begin report writing in the next couple weeks. The auditor working on that audit is my auditor who spends 50% of his time at the EOC. So when we went into that audit, we noted to the fire marshal where this program is housed that this audit may take a little bit longer than normal because of the staffing limitations there. And this audit lends itself to that, so everything's okay there. Transfer of responsibility agreements, that audit is currently in the writing phase. And the overtime audit, that audit, we began that in mid-December. We're just wrapping up preliminary survey, which is where we, for lack of a better term, try to get smart on what's going on. And then we'll begin field work and focus in on some issues that we find with overtime. Regarding any downsides, well, I always feel bad when we can't complete the entire audit program or audit plan. But I think keeping these on here as they are, we can always, if we don't complete them, we can always move them forward to the following year if we feel it's necessary. Or like I've said before, sometimes programs change or code changes and some of these will drop out. But I have made a note to pursue these that are of special interest to the Assembly.
Thank you, Mr. Chadwick. Do members of the committee have any questions or comments before we vote? I don't see anyone in the chat. Ms. Camacho, would you conduct the vote, please?
Sure thing. I'll go ahead and just do a roll call since I think that's easier through Teams. Ms. LaFrance.
Yes.
Ms. Allard. Mr. Rivera.
Yes.
Mr. Slivka.
Yes.
Ms. Henderson.
Yes.
And Ms. Morrison.
Yes.
Okay. We have 5 yeses and the no vote from Ms. Allard.
Thank you, Ms. Camacho. Okay, thank you, Mr. Chadwick. Appreciate all the work you do with these audits, the work of your team, especially with having some of your staff supporting the EOC right now. We appreciate what you do.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll go ahead then and move on to the final item under new business, and that's AIM 186.
Sorry, I didn't understand.
Sorry about that. 186-2020 Internal Audit Report, Mountain View Community Center, Parks and Recreation Department. And the number for that audit report is 2020-11. Mr. Chadwick, will you be kicking off this discussion?
Yes, I can kick it off, and then I suspect the Parks and Recreation Director may want to add some comments. I believe he's participating, Mr. Durand.
Great, thank you.
So this was an audit that was requested by the administration, by Parks and Recreation. In this audit, we had 6 findings with this audit. The first finding dealt with the commingling of funds at the Parks and Recreation, excuse me, at the Mountain View Community Center. Where they commingled the municipal grant with other funds. The Boys and Girls Club in finding 2 had not established a budget for municipal grant expenditures. On finding 3 on page 4, our review of the center's 2019 transactions revealed about $13,000 in questionable bonuses that were related to expenses charged to the municipal grant for 7 center employees. And then finding 4, we had the Boys and Girls Club did not obtain prior written approval from the grant administrator before using municipal grant funds to pay for indirect charges. Finding 5 at the bottom of page 5, we found that the Boys and Girls Club did not obtain 3 competitive price quotes for purchases over $5,000. And then the last finding on page 7, the Boys and Girls Club did not maintain an inventory list of equipment purchased with municipal grant funds. The Parks and Recreation Department was responsive to all the audit findings and recommendations. And I'd like to add that at about March of last year or so, the Parks and Recreation Department hired a contract administrator, which should help solve some of these problems. The position had been vacant for, as I recall, for a few years. And so now the Parks and Recreation Department now has someone focused looking at not just this contract, but all the contracts for Parks and Recreation. Mr. Duran, did you have anything you wanted to add?
Yes, this is Josh Duran, Director of Parks and Recreation. Thank you for that, Chadwick. Things I'd like to add is Chadwick is absolutely right. We did not have a contract administrator for a couple of years. We do have one on board this year, and we've already made improvements as it relates to some of the recommendations and the management comments that were realized through this audit. For example, they have been getting 3 quotes for purchases over $500, and they have been seeking our permission. We have had continued back and forth communication through our new contract administrator, and we see a lot of opportunities for improvement because of this audit, and we will absolutely be acting on them. And then there's just a more interesting thing that relates to this all. In late 2019, we started a visioning exercise that we were facilitating for the Boys and Girls Club to have a public process and identify how this asset can better serve the community. And through that process, we will probably find some new ideas to work with the Boys and Girls Club to better serve the Mountain View community as it relates to their mission.
Thank you, Mr. Durand, and thank you, Mr. Chadwick. Mr. Chadwick, did you have anything else you wanted to add?
I didn't have anything else unless someone has a question.
Actually, yes, we have Mr. Rivera in the queue. Mr. Rivera?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I asked a couple of questions to Mr. Chadwick about this audit when we received it in early December. And glad to see that this isn't a recurring issue, that the last time this audit was done, it was in 2001, and there were no findings. So this is a new issue. I will say I am somewhat disappointed that we are not able to get any reimbursement from the items. Not that I am particularly prone to, I guess, for lack of a better phrase, putting any pain on some of our cherished partners. But I feel that we should ensure that when funds are not spent correctly and we see them in audits, that we attempt to seek reimbursement. But otherwise, I had no other questions for the audit and thought it was well done.
Thank you, Mr. Rivera. Mr. Chadwick or Mr. Duran, did you want to comment or reply?
Yes, this is Mike Chadwick through the chair. As Mr. Rivera stated, it is difficult to seek reimbursement on these bonuses, primarily because since the funds were commingled, it was unclear what funds were used for the bonuses dispersed in 2019. And given that the contract did not specifically prohibit bonuses, and since the funds were commingled, it would probably be difficult to seek reimbursement. Now, just as a clarifying note, the related expenses noted in that finding were other payroll costs associated with the bonuses, such as Social Security and those types of things. But once they get the funds so they're not commingled, I would think that this would go away. Or at least we would know where the money came from. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chadwick. We have Mr. Constant in the queue.
Yeah, thank you. I would just refer back to Mr. Rivera's first point that it's good to have this audit, and going back to the previous audit, there were no other findings. And so I would suggest, rather than the first step being some kind of a effort to fine or penalize or reclaim or require a refund, that we come up with some kind of plan of correction and let that work. And should issues arise going forward after a warning, a clear plan has been put in place, then conversations about penalties that would include reductions or returns of funds would be more in order, rather than doing your more heavy acts first. And so I think actually the way that this is working out is better than approaching a small organization that's just making a little money to do really important work and demanding funds from them. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Constant. Mr. Chadwick or Mr. Durand, would you like to comment or reply?
This is Mike.
This is Mr. Durand.
Go ahead, Mr. Durand.
Yeah, I would agree with what Mr. Constant said, that, yeah, this is just a great opportunity for improvement and to get things back in line, and we're absolutely already taking those steps.
Thank you, Mr. Durand. Mr. Chadwick?
I have no further comments. I agree with both of the previous comments.
Thank you. I had put myself in the queue and I don't see any other members of the committee in the chat or texting me, but thank you for your work on this audit. And my first thought when I read it was it seemed like there were some staffing issues, at least in terms of support in a lack of structure for how to account for the funds. So I agree with the plan of correction and Mr. Constant's comment about this is a small organization doing important work. And I know that for nonprofits, having adequate staffing, especially for these types of administrative issues, can be a challenge. And the only comment that I had, or question really, has to do with resources. And it sounds like the contract administrator will be able to provide that support. These actions that have been identified, such as developing a written process, establishing separate fund accounts, is it our understanding then that the organization, the Boys and Girls Club, has the resources on their end to do these sorts of things and address these issues? Do either of you know, Mr. Durand or Mr. Chadwick?
Yeah, this is Mr. Durand. Yes, we do believe that they have the ability to move that forward. And you had some questions before about their operations plan and how, I think what you were getting at there is, do they identify an employee incentive program in there, and how does that relate to the bonuses, and what are the metrics associated with how these bonuses are realized? And those are things that we will be requesting and will be reviewing.
Great, thank you. Do any other members of the committee have questions or comments on this audit before we move on? Okay, I don't see or hear anybody. Is there any other business under new business we need to take up?
Yes, Ms. LaFrance, this is Mike Chadwick. I had one thing to mention.
Thank you. Please go ahead, Mr. Chadwick.
I just wanted to let you know that we'll be releasing our annual report that summarizes our audit activity for 2020. We'll be releasing that probably today, maybe tomorrow. It's at the print shop right now. But just to summarize, in 2020, Internal Audit issued 11 municipal audit reports, 4 school district audit reports, 2 sunset audit reports, and performed 15 municipal special studies or special projects. In addition, we attended 58 police department events. That means we attended events that deal with, we verified the disposal of drugs, the disposal of auction property, the destruction of guns, the auction of guns, cash conversion, in other words, cash that they're converting and depositing. And then we also provided, as I stated previously, nearly 2,012 hours to the EOC. So that report will be, you should be receiving that today or tomorrow. Depends on the print shop. Thank you.
Great. Thank you for that, Mr. Chadwick. Again, appreciate all the work that you and your team perform.
Thank you.
Any other new business? Okay, we'll move on to number 4, old business. We don't have anything listed. Does anyone have anything to bring up? Okay, I don't see anybody, so moving on to 5, other comments. Any comments?
Through the chair, this is Alex Slivka. I would like to take the opportunity on behalf of the municipality to truly thank Mr. Chadwick and his team for their support of the EOC. It was very critical last year, and they were very helpful, and I want to take the time to thank them for their participation.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Slivka, and thank you, Mr. Chadwick.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Okay, we'll go ahead and move on then to audience participation.
Hello? Hello?
Yes, you can go ahead.
Okay,
Eugene?
Eugene Carl Hedman. I'll start my timer. Okay. Number one, I listened to your meeting. I'm alarmed by the direction that was said that community staff dealing with audits, and when they were talking about a audit plan, were reassigned to deal with other issues. So that has made it difficulty to handle the proposed plan of what's going to be audited. One would think that, particularly in the case of dealing with CARES Act money out there and it's moving around the community in different ways, that it's even more important to keep and maintain the staff to deal with the ongoing audits of the municipality of Anchorage, and then your committee, you voted. One member of the assembly I noted that didn't approve it. Assembly member Allard, but when you voted, it was unclear listening to what you were voting on. I suspect that was approving of the proposed audit plan, and where was the opportunity for public comment? Remind you of state law providing a reasonable opportunity to the public heard, and you proceeded on a vote, and it didn't connect with the people and have an opportunity to address it. And I think that's basically all I have to say, but this is not the way to go. And I just want to one further note here on this. I've been watching CARES Act money and how it's been being handled, even in communities like Houston. And I remember a conversation with the mayor when it was addressed for public comment. And I asked us, what about how are you going to ensure on these applications that these applications are going to be complying with handling the CARES Act money? And the way I was hearing from the mayor of Houston was they're not going to do anything about it. They're just going to let it go. And this is an alarm bell out there. Is you've got these monies going out there, and you're leaving a situation, particularly in Houston, of making sure that whoever's getting the money, it's properly being used and what it's intended for. And this note on this audit thing and planning the audit, you shouldn't be shortcutting the audit situation. You should be securing the situation that you are effectively auditing the municipality of Anchorage. And that's all I have to say, and my time's up. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Haberman. Appreciate your comments. I have Mr. Rivera in the queue. Mr. Rivera.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you to Mr. Haberman for your comment. Just as a note of record, the motion that we made today was to recommend approval of the audit plan, the 2021 audit plan, to the Anchorage Assembly. So From here, this audit plan will be heading towards the assembly, and the assembly will have the final say on it. So if you would like, or any other members of the public would like to comment on the plan, it will be on an assembly agenda sometime soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rivera, for that. And I would add, thank you, Mr. Haberman. I should have restated the motion that Mr. Slivka made to endorse the 2021 audit plan. And so I appreciate you raising that point. I want to note that Mr. Chadwick has noted in the chat regarding CARES Act funding. BDO stated on page 7 that they would evaluate the accounting and financial reporting for federal awarding, including eligibility requirements. Thank you, Mr. Chadwick. Are there any other members of the public here who wish to testify, who wish to speak? *6 to unmute. I do not see anyone else. I'm looking through the numbers here. Okay, thank you, Mr. Rivera. No other members of the public present. Okay, that brings us to the end of our agenda. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
This is Alex. I second.
We are adjourned. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.